We are the best team in Malaysia because we have strong and veteran players.
It's a hurricane, it's over before you know it. Why you shaking?
BTR adalah tim pertama yang masuk GPL dan kita akan membuat kejutan di sana.
Royalty, now we're breaking down the enemy, move over.
ก็ตัวไป MSI 2018 นี้ก็ค่อนข้างมีความหมายกับทีมครับเพราะว่าจะโชว์ให้รู้ว่าทีมไทยก็ไปเวทีระดับโลกได้ครับ
It's all for this. We're gonna stand on top.
I think this GPL is a chance for all the 5 countries to really show that what they can do and how much they can perform, especially going into MSI, as the winner will get a slot at the MSI playgroups. So it's a chance to do our country proud.
To the other 4 teams in this GPL, good luck to everyone and may the best team win. And hopefully the winner will represent the region very well in MSI.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Southeast Asian English broadcast of the 2018 Garena Premier League spring season. Of course, we just came from Game 1 earlier when Ascension Gaming from Thailand proved their dominance against the Kuala Lumpur Hunters of Malaysia by taking that first game right there. But of course, we're still going to be heading into Game 2. This time, it's going to be Bigatron Esports from Indonesia and Mineskis of the Philippines taking the stage. Of course, before we get into all that action, we'll be introducing ourselves as your casters for this game. I'm Ark, the Gadget Service Fam, and of course, with me is Chisto, and we're going to be bringing you all the action live right here on the stream.
Yeah, and I guess, Arctic, we should recap what happened in that first game between Ascension Gaming and Kuala Lumpur Hunters. Of course, it was Ascension Gaming coming out with the victory, although it was kind of a rocky finish for them as they almost let Kuala Lumpur Hunters back into the game, but in the end, just too much team fight prowess from Ascension Gaming led to them getting that victory. But moving on to this next matchup between Mineski and Bigatron Gaming. So I understand that Bigatron Gaming, a fairly new name in the esports scene and in the GPL as well. So why don't you go ahead and discuss that, Arctic?
Yeah, what I really like about this team is they're very reminiscent of the journey that Team Manila Eagles of the Philippines had in splits past, wherein just the previous season, last 2017 summer, they were actually towards the end of the Garuda series. They finished off 6th and they were in danger of potential relegation at that time. And all of a sudden, nobody from Indonesia expected that coming into the 2018 spring season that they would even be champions. And all of a sudden, they take it all the way to the finals of the Garuda series. Let's go ahead and check out these the rosters for each team before we talk about it a little bit more. Of course, coming in from Mineskis, they beat Kaigu in the top lane, June in the jungle, Exosen in the mid lane, Gary on AD carry, and TG on support for Team Philippines. So it's going to be pretty interesting here. Mineski coming back with a vengeance right here. They were absent from the previous GPL season, and this time around, they'll be coming in with their 2 new Korean imports in the form of June as well as Gary, who have been performing above and beyond in the Philippines. But why don't you talk about them a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, you did say that Bigatron Esports, they were sort of the underdogs headed into their own league, but Mineski, nobody really counts them as the underdogs as far as the pro gaming series goes. But right now we see the roster from Bigatron Esports. It will be Minky in the top lane, Mintry in the jungle, Radiance mid lane, and rounding their compound in the ball lane is Zico and Spade.
Yes, and of course, what's interesting, like I mentioned, so as you can see there on your screen, that is Bigatron Esports, and also take note of their coach behind them, Tybalt. He was actually a former League of Legends Garuda Series player himself in Indonesia. Not only that, he actually represented Indonesia in the very first League of Legends International Collegiate Championship, the very first one that was held in Taipei, Taiwan. So he has a lot of experience that he brings under his belt, and I think that's pretty much definitive. Like, as I was saying earlier, one of the reasons why they emerged as champion in the Garuda series is because I was able to talk to some of their competitors, actually, their direct competitors from Indonesia, and they mentioned that one thing that really stood out from Bigatron Esports is the fact that they had the complete package suddenly going into the 2018 spring season. They had the proper coaching staff, they had the proper working environment to perform above and beyond in Indonesia, and I think that's pretty much why we see this particular team in the GPL right now. And I think that pretty much says a lot about the Indonesian team, because they've pretty much been consistently towards the bottom of the pack in the past GPLs. But this time around, I wouldn't be surprised if they pull off a few surprises going into the 2018 spring season.
Yeah, but comparing that to MSK Arctic, a team that we have watched throughout the pro gaming series, and they've looked extremely dominant as far as competition within the Philippines, and bringing in 2 Korean imports means that they've just been sort of buffed here, and they look very poised to take this GPL and move on to MSI. And I really wouldn't be surprised to see MSK at the top of the group stage after all of these matches have been finished.
I'd have to agree with you, Chisto. I mean, if you're going to look at teams that are kind of the favorites to become in the running, if you're going to base it off purely off the record of the previous GPLs, the top teams that usually come up towards the top is Thailand has been consistent without a doubt. Ascension Gaming especially, who has been repping Thailand for quite a number of seasons now. Meanwhile, for MSK, I mean, like I mentioned, just last season, summer season, they came off shy second to Team Manila Eagles, hence they weren't able to represent the Philippines at the time. But like I mentioned, they come off with a vengeance now that they've managed to qualify for the 2018 spring season. And you have to take note, guys, this isn't just a factor of them adding the 2 Korean imports. Everyone else that was already on the MSK roster pretty much performed above and beyond. But let's go ahead and find out if that'll translate as we head into the pick and ban phase.
Yeah, it looks like MSK have already picked up the rise here, probably going over to James in the mid lane. Okay, oopsie, I won't be able to see the rest of the pick and ban phase
Not yet.
so
Not yet, guys.
not yet. Let's just calm down for a bit. But yeah, let's go ahead and talk about MSK, because we did discuss Bigatron a lot. And MSK, like we mentioned earlier, they were fairly dominant throughout the pro gaming series, and they looked like they were really ready to head on to the GPL. And I always see the MSK players like posting on their social medias, road to MSI. They're really ready for this, and I really wouldn't be surprised to see them perform exceptionally well.
Oh, we're back. There we go. So let's go ahead and review this first rotation of picks so far, Chisto, because I know you're pretty much dying to get into this already.
My momentum was like going upwards, and then suddenly pick and ban stopped. We're like, whoa, what happened? So it looks like MSK, like I mentioned earlier, they will have the Rise locked in, and they've also picked up the Sejuani and Ezreal. As for Bigatron, they do have the Kazakhs here, so denying that pick away from Jun, and the Varus and Azir as well. We saw the Varus being used by Ascension in the first match really well, landed those really key chain of corruptions onto the Caitlyn. But for this match, it'll be harder to land those onto an Ezreal, which is fairly slippery.
I'd also like to emphasize that if you're going to look at the roster fielded out for MSK, we saw earlier in the player card that Exosen was kind of in the middle because he is the main, but for this particular game right here, looks like we will be seeing James fielded out. And just a little bit of a prequel, because I'm pretty sure some people might be wondering, Exosen, pretty much a familiar face, not just in the Philippines, for Southeast Asia, but I think, Chiso, you could give great insight onto why we're seeing James particularly this time around.
Yeah, because MSK were sort of experimenting as far as their starting roster goes throughout the pro gaming series, and it looks like James has more synergy with their jungler Jun, and having that mid-jungle synergy is really important. So that's, I guess, why MSK opted to play James instead of Exo, because it does change the team's dynamic, and it looks like that is what they're going for, as the Taric is locked in by Bigatron. So it looks like they're going heavy for team fighting here, Arctic, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them lock in a tank for their last pick, because they do need that front line to assist the Taric, because unless you have a tank with this lineup, it's going to be very difficult. As for MSK, they were hovering over a few options. The Gnar is picked up here by Kaigu. The Thresh was hovered earlier, and it's one of TG's signature picks, so I wouldn't be that surprised if MSK do lock in a Thresh for their last pick.
Not to mention, if I recall correctly, towards the finals of the Garuda series for Bigatron Esports, Azir, Varus, these are two champions that they're very comfortable with. And I'd also like to highlight the fact that with Bigatron Esports, like they have their own comfort picks, but as a team in general, they have that flexibility to use different compositions across the board, depending on what they kind of fancy, what they feel would be much more adequate, depending on the team that they're up against. So, surprisingly enough, we will be seeing that Leona from TG, though.
Yeah, so no Thresh, no death sentences here. As for Bigatron Esports, they are hovering over a few top laners. I do believe it will be the Jax headed on to match up against the Gnar in the top lane, because for sure the Kazakhs is going to the jungle. I did mention that Bigatron Esports, they needed a tank. I wonder what build path will make you choose here, because there are a lot of options on the Jax. Usually you could go for the really snowbally Trinity Force build, or you could go to the full tank option. Let's just wait and see as we head on to the game. But yeah, looks like both teams have selected their team comps, and both teams look like they just want to go in 5v5.
Definitely. And
Team fight.
I like that you brought that question up with regards to Minky, because upon interviewing some of the players from the Garuda series that isn't within Bigatron Esports, because when I asked Bigatron like who they feel their biggest asset is, it's basically the neutral response that, everybody pretty much contributed to the victory. But, talking to some of the players outside of Bigatron, they painted a different story wherein they particularly highlighted Minky here. Minky, he's pretty much confident in using these fighter champions, and if anything, it's pretty much brought a lot of victories to Bigatron towards qualifying, leading to the finals. So I'm wondering how that'll go down here though, because as far as the composition that I'm seeing here from Bigatron Esports, it's pretty much something that they're playing much more to their comfort as opposed to something that's a bit experimental going into the GPL. So I guess, they're just sticking to their guns here.
Yeah, it looks like both teams are very heavy towards the team fighting side, but I do want to mention that from Bigatron Esports, they're going to rely a lot on the Cosmic Radiance of the Chariot to act as their sort of pseudo frontline, because the Kha'Zix and the Jax aren't the most tanky champions, but they will do most of the diving, and pairing that with the Cosmic Radiance, I guess, is a really good choice from them, because it allows them to have that few seconds of invulnerability and really try and dive towards the backline of MSK.
So there you have it, guys, with both compositions locked in. Like I mentioned, this is a Southeast Asian English broadcast. So aside from the Philippines, we have all different countries watching, for those that prefer to watch the English broadcast as opposed to some of the other regions which are casting in their native dialect. So shout out to everybody right there, and feel free to let us know your thoughts as to who guys are rooting for, and share your thoughts as well on the compositions locked in by both sides. If you feel that Team Philippines MSK has it in the bag, be sure to use the hashtag MSKWin. Or if you're rooting for Indonesia to prove their worth and kind of switch things up a bit because of their recent placing in the previous GPL, be sure to hashtag BTR win for Bigatron Esports, guys.
Yeah, shout out to Southeast Asia, of course. The winner of this GPL will be heading onto MSI, so that's a great honor. You want to represent Southeast Asia headed on to the mid-season invitational.
And I think it's a great reward, and it's interesting that you bring that up, because I feel like this time around, upon doing research on all these different teams, this is probably the most competitive GPL that we have yet, even with the absence of Vietnam from competing in this, because they were rewarded their own slot leading up towards MSI, leading up towards Worlds, because of their consistent performance, not to mention a pretty dominating performance when they entered Worlds just the previous year. So looking at things, of course, to put basis as to why I think this is the most competitive, we're seeing some of these teams suddenly acquiring players from other teams which were pretty much focal to the reason of a lot of these team victories. So same kind pretty much goes across the board, but looks like we'll find out who will be winning this matchup right here. Of course, once again, it's going to be Team Philippines' MSK versus Team Indonesia's Bigatron Esports, heading on to Summoner's Rift as we head into Game 2 of the 2018 Garena Premier League.
Yeah, and before all of the action starts on the Rift here, Arctic, I want to go back to the point that you brought up where Vietnam isn't competing in this year's GPL because they were rewarded and they now have their own competitive region. I saw a lot of people asking where's Levi, where's Gigabyte Marine. So we won't get to see them here, guys. You have to wait. Maybe in MSI you get to see them. But for this GPL, the highlight is on these 5 countries.
Yep. And with that highlight right there, I would, to be honest, I would love to see kind of the underdogs perform in this, because with the absence of Vietnam, I feel like this is the time for either of these 5 regions to shine. This is their moment right here to eventually lead up to MSI. So I'm wondering how both either of these countries would take it. But let's go ahead and look at what's happening so far on the Rift. So both junglers, take note, are going to be starting off on their respective blue buffs here.
It looks like different priorities for both junglers here. But Arctic, you did mention that you wanted to root for the underdog. I'll go the opposite route. I'm rooting for the favorites here because I honestly want MSK to represent for MSI, but who knows, maybe BTR can upset them here. It looks like both junglers are going around the same pace as far as clearing their jungle.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a big question on my mind right now for Bigatron Esports, because like I mentioned, they became champions for the Garuda series. One of the focal reasons was because they've had great support staff. But I'm wondering, in Indonesia, they've pretty much proven themselves, but will that translate into success on the international stage? Because that's still a different story, and that's kind of the struggle for Indonesia these past few seasons, wherein they always fell towards the bottom of the pack. We saw some fights of them in the All-Stars, but that's a different stage right there. Those are different circumstances. This is GPL we're talking about, wherein they're pretty much playing to their optimal composition. Although it's interesting to note for Bigatron Esports that they're actually playing with a different jungler than who they fielded for the finals of the Garuda series throughout the entire split. So instead of Starless, we'll be seeing Min Tree. And Min Tree right here is actually of Vietnamese descent. So it just goes to say that it's not just MSK that's boosting their own form of imports. Bigatron Esports as well, in the form of Minky as well as Min Tree, are of Vietnamese descent. So pretty interesting balance right here.
You know, I do like that you mentioned that Min Tree is from Vietnam. There are a lot of star junglers from Vietnam. If you follow the LPL, there's Sofem, who plays for Snake, I believe. And of course, as of recent, Levi from Gigabyte Greens, now on 100 Thieves Academy team. Both Vietnamese junglers and both really, really good. So maybe this change in junglers changes the way that Bigatron Esports plays, because it will change the dynamics definitely, because many junglers have different playstyles. Maybe that will be the key factor if they want to overcome MSK for this matchup.
That's actually a good point, Chisto, because looking at the history, upon talking to Tibalt, their coach, it's actually a scenario wherein they only got to play with Min Tree after they won the finals, once they did make that change from Starless to Min Tree. So there's not really as much time in preparation for GPL to get that synergy on. But then again, maybe the talent of Min Tree alone, because of for which he was scouted, could translate into a victory. Will it be enough there? That is still a bit of a question, but so far, pretty much equal across the board.
Comparing that to MSK Arctic, where this roster of players have been playing for an entire split together, so definitely synergy is not a question. These players know what each other want to do at what time, and it shows with their play, as TG wanted to look for Zenith Blade there, unfortunately did not land. Really tried to play aggressive, which is just classic TG.
Pretty much. I mean, one of the things that's really great about TG here is that once he does get a successful set, it's a great spearhead here for Gary, who has pretty much had a great debut in the Arena Pro Gaming Series, the local league, the local professional league here in the Philippines. So I think it's pretty much expected that TG just gonna look for those opportunities to get this Ezreal going.
Yeah, and one more thing is that since Gary is playing that Ezreal, very hard to catch out, especially having that arcane shift, practically a flash on demand. Oh, hold up, engage!
Yup, that's gonna be the engage along with the support coming in from June right here. They really want in on Spade. Spade, he's trying to walk this out, just a little bit more hits, and that's gonna be first blood going to the support of MSK.
And that is a trademark aggression coming in the early game for MSK. You pick a support such as a Leona for TG, he will go in pre-level 6 just to try and go for an aggressive move. And I think MSK would have loved to give that kill over to Gary, but the Ignite will take it as mid lane James. Oh no, he cancelled it.
Yep, he has to be careful right there. Looks like Min Tree not going to be pushing that gank though. This is just going to content himself with taking out what camps he can from the side of MSK. But still, yeah, great move here from MSK towards the bot side. And you also have to take note, looking at what summoners were extended from Bigatron Esports, a heal from Zico, so that's going to be a little bit of a detriment for them in the bot lane. Less safety, not to mention the flash down for Spade as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Jun go for another move towards the bot lane, because the Taric is flashless until he hits level 6. There's really not that much protection from all ends. It's just sustaining the damage coming from the poke of the Ezreal. But one thing to note here, TG has already picked up the Moby boots on the Leona, and given that he's laning with an Ezreal who's a fairly safe AD carry, the Leona is free to roam across the map.
Yeah, and I'm wondering though, with that gank towards bot side, because if you're going to notice, it was Bigatron Esports that was kind of pushed them towards bot side without having the proper vision, so it almost caught them by surprise in a way. And okay, meanwhile, June making a very gutsy move here on the Min Tree. Does take one of the smaller monsters right there, but not really much of a detriment here overall.
Yeah, we call that battle warding, where your jungler goes into the enemy jungle, steals away a few of the mini raptors, and tracks the enemy jungler as well. So you get to steal a bit of gold, a bit of experience, and you also track the enemy jungler. As bot lane, there seems to be a bit of an engage.
Yeah, once again, TG looking for that opportunity, but it looks like he's going to take quite a bit of damage in exchange though, so they'll have to back off just a teeny tiny bit there.
Yeah, and I don't think Mineski's bot lane can afford to go for trades such as that because they will get out-sustained by the Varus and Tarek. Ezreal Leona, they don't have the luxury of healing up after these trades. So if Mineski decide to go in, it needs to be an all-in or just don't go in at all.
Yes. But man, at the end of the day, I'm loving this proactivity from the bot lane so far. TJ though, a little bit on the lower end of the spectrum there towards the end of the day. And if you notice towards the end of that trade as well, Zico and Spade, they were a bit on the healthier side. But then again, I guess it was in contribution as well through the shields as well as the heals coming from the Tarek as is. Having all that utility to make sure that they could soak up a bit of that damage whenever Gary and TG make that proactive move to trade off in the bot lane.
Yeah, and looking at the early laning phase here, Arctic, I think you definitely have to favor Mineski's lineup because they do have more options to be proactive in the early game, whereas for Bigatron Esports, it's leaning towards the team fighting side where the strength of their comp really shines when they're grouped up as fights. So despite them being fairly behind early, you really can't count them out once we begin moving on to the mid game. Once we see these full-on 5v5 fights, it's going to be very scary for Mineski to navigate this because Bigatron Esports, they have so many options to reassess fights here. They have the Cosmic Radiance from the Tarek. They have the Emperor's Divide to stop Mineski in their tracks if they do go for an engage. As for Mineski, it's more of just go all in, where if Bigatron Esports do decide to go for an engage of their own, it's very difficult for them to disengage.
Oh yeah, so but it looks like that's going to be Mentry looking at the opportunity to take down Kaigo. Kaigo is trying to run this out right there, force the flash away, but looks like Mickey just going to chase him out. He's going to blast his way out of there. Will Mickey continue? No, looks like he'll content himself right there. And good try though. Good try from BTR.
Yeah, flash for both top laners will be burned there, but in the end, I think that's a win for Bigatron Esports because it does force Kaigo back and allows Minky to push out the wave here and possibly do a reset of his own, probably get more items on this Jax. And that's a good gank there from the Kha'Zix. I wonder though, will he be able to punish the flashless Gnar in the near future? Because looking at the bot lane, we did see that Spade burned his flash earlier, but we haven't seen the Sejuani from Jun go back there and try to get another kill onto the Tarek.
Yeah, and I think that's something that Mineski really needs to start realizing, especially just by history. If Minky is left untouched towards this top side, he's just going to scale beautifully in. Like I mentioned, he's been a key component for Bigatron Esports as far as what victories they've managed to achieve once he starts spiraling out of control. Although so far that's not really much of the case, but we have seen attempts coming in from Mintry to really get things going for this Jax. And with that flashdown from Kaigo, that might actually be an opportunity should Mintry try to push that advantage for the Indonesian team.
And speaking of the Jax, he did pick up Sheen on his second back of the game, I believe, and once the Jax gets to that late game point, it's gonna be very difficult for Kaigo to actually 1v1 him because the Jax can just kill the Gnar 1v1, whereas the Gnar cannot. It's very difficult to deal with a split-pushing Jax in the late game as Kaigo. He doesn't have his flash.
Yes, that's going to be a jump out of Mentry. He's resolute on taking down. Taking on flash is down for the top laner of Mineski. Oh, just one more hit. No, it's not enough. Kaigo will escape with a slither of health. Whew.
Oh man, Kaigo, that was one auto away from going down as True Shot Barrage. Wonder what this will hit.
Yep, it's making its flight right there. Ooh, does not quite connect onto anybody though.
I wonder who was aiming for. Maybe he just wanted to stack his Fear of the Goddess Arctic. Who knows? But that was kind of a questionable decision.
Is he a dive? Yep, that's a full initiate coming in from the members of Mineski. Take note, that's 3 members right there. But looks like Radiance will escape just fine.
I like the patience to hold off onto the cleanse there. He waited till the Solar Flare actually went down and then he cleansed, so all of the stuns were removed because the chain CC wasn't layered at the optimal timing. That means that Radiant will be able to escape with his life. They do force out 2 summoners though, and that means Mineski might be taking the first Inferno Drake of the game.
Yeah, interesting transition right there. Looks like Mineski will manage to take that safely, knowing very well that Radiance couldn't make the response if ever the Indonesian team tried to push that. So, first Drake officially goes to Team Philippines Mineski.
Yeah, it looks like Mineski are having the early game advantages, but we're yet to see Bigatron Esports move towards those 5v5 fights where their comp really shines. We haven't seen those massive Cosmic Radiances where the Tarek can just protect his team. MSK though, this is when they want to fight. I mean, they are at the point of power for their lineup. They shouldn't let Bigatron Esports get to that point where the Varus can scale already. Azir has enough items. This is the time for MSK to start looking for fights and start ending these fights on top.
Interesting that you bring that up, Chisto, because if you're going to look at how Bigatron Esports played it out in the Garuda series, they're pretty much comfortable with if they have a composition that they know would just perform above and beyond towards the late game once they reach that late scaling. They just hold it out in the early to mid phase. So I'm wondering, can MSK pull that trigger early on just to avoid Bigatron Esports from reaching that point right there?
Yeah, and it really shows you the difference in styles across regions, Arctic, because MSK, they're known for winning early game, but what, TG? They'll be forced to flash. It supports flash though, so he really doesn't mind that. He'll be coming off cooldown fairly quickly, but going back, I didn't mention it really shows you the difference in playstyles across different regions, because Bigatron Esports, like you mentioned, they are okay with scaling towards the late game and then winning from there. As for MSK, they usually decide the game just during the laning phase.
Yeah, but so far, I mean, like you mentioned, after that gank attempt from June towards the bot side, we haven't seen as much proactivity from there. If anything, it's just mostly building up on these levels here, trying to take what they can. We did see that attempt in the mid lane, though. Didn't quite lead towards a takedown onto Radiance. Was able to force summoners, though, but if you're going to notice, it's almost pretty much up here for the mid laner of Bigatron Esports.
Yeah, almost up. But speaking of things being off cooldown, the Glacial Prison from Sejuani is already available, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them go for a play mid lane. But it looks like Mintry is responding in a proper manner. He's hovering around the mid area, so if a gank does happen within the mid lane, he will be able to respond as we see a fight.
Yes, looks like that's going to be the fight. TG tries to go for the initiate right there. Teleport will be popped up by Minky. He's going to be joining the fray, but that's going to be 4 members of MSK converging onto the members of Bigatron Esports. Their cards are slowly dwindling. That's going to be June getting the kill onto Minky. That'll be the support as well. Zoo looking very, very low. Radiance looks like that'll force MSK to back away, but that ends in a 2-0 in favor of Team Philippines.
Yeah, MSK were able to collapse first. Their Radiance not able to match the roam time from Hamas, and in the end, I think Hamas could have flashed aggressively to pick up the kill onto the Varus, but still, MSK able to pick up the first tower of the game as well. So a lot of firsts here going for MSK. First Blood, first Dragon, first tower as well. Now they're going to be able to rotate across the map and take even more from Bigatron Esports. Now looking at the replay, it's another proactive move by TG, his trademark aggression on the Leona. And despite the Cosmic Radiance, despite the teleport coming out, there are just more members from MSK in this fight, and just overwhelmed Bigatron Esports. And 1Q would have definitely taken down the Varus. Unfortunately, Hamas wasn't able to land it, so it means the Varus will escape with his life, but still, that's a massive win for MSK.
Indeed, just when I was asking, like, when is MSK going to start pulling the trigger, right then and there, happening towards the bot lane, they were able to take down 2 members of Bigatron Esports, and this is going to be a pretty good build-up for both Gary as well as TG. So if you're going to notice, 100% kill participation across the board for the jungler, for the bot lane of Team Philippines right here. So far so good, I'd say. I'm wondering if this is going to start to build up right here.
Yeah, that's the 100% KP, like you mentioned, because they have been playing around that lane. They've been playing around TG and his engages on this Leon. He's been very decisive so far, knowing when he wants to start fights. And MSK have been capitalizing on these engages once TG gets the catch onto the members, because looking at the Varus, fairly mobile AD carry, there's really no escaping the Leona. Once she lands one ability on you, everything will follow suit.
Not to mention, I just noticed, that was a pretty good trade-off right there, because not only did they get those 2 kills, they were also able to get first turret of the game towards bot lane. So I think that's a pretty good build-up for MSK. Looks like June gonna back away after getting spotted by both Radiance and Mintry, but so far so good for the Philippine squad.
Yeah, now I think they're posturing around the Rift Herald. They want to take that objective very soon because it will accelerate the game for them. They don't want to let Bigatron Esports get... No, Hamas, why'd you face check?
Yes, Hamas though taking quite a bit of damage right there. Mintry jumps straight in, but will get saved by the Glacial Prison right there. Radiance tries to shove away the rest of MSK. That's going to be 1-for-1 so far. Radiance in quite a bit of trouble right there. Gary hitting from the backline. That's going to be the double kill. 2-for-1 in favor of MSK.
Yeah, both the mid laner and jungler are down for BTR. That will mean MSK will be able to secure the Rift Herald for themselves, and despite Hamas going down, that's definitely worth it for MSK.
Yeah, and man, Mineski just getting a lot of value out of that. Bigatron Esports, sure, they were able to get the consolation prize by taking down James, but if you're going to notice, as far as Gary, he's just starting to spiral out of control in this game. That's something that Bigatron Esports has to start responding to, and I like this configuration happening right here. Gary pushing towards the top side, June making a proactive move to take down mid lane, and that effectively takes away all the first tier turrets from Bigatron Esports.
Yeah, the map is definitely opened up now, Arctic, and this is a scary situation to be in versus an early game team because TG is practically free to roam, free to invade the enemy jungle, lay down the vision, and I don't think Mineski will be scared to look for fights because, like I mentioned, this is their point of power. Gary, he's nearly completing his mana mune. He's already nearly fully stacked, and once that happens, the 2-item power spike from the Ezreal is incredibly scary. There are no tanks on the side of Bigatron, so the poke coming from the Mystic shots will just hurt so much.
Man, and that's gonna be yet another dragon going to this side. Okay, wait, actually, it does go to Bigatron Esports. So, again, just a small consolation. A nice small move to try to at least keep the balance. But then again, if you're going to look at this goal difference, it is starting to build up for Mineski. Almost, actually, we have reached 5,000 already.
Doesn't matter though, you do pick up a mountain drake, but unless you're able to hit towers, it really doesn't give you that much value. And given the configuration of the lanes, Mineski are now setting up for a 1-3-1 split push with the double teleport coming from both of their solo laners. So the play that Bigatron here has to make is either get a catch onto Kaigu or to James, because it's going to be incredibly dangerous for them to engage onto the 3-man squad in the mid lane just because of the threat of double teleports coming up.
Well, looks like towards this top side, we are seeing Bigatron Esports slowly establishing control, but then again, you also have to take note of the movements of Mineski. They're just pretty much confidence roaming across the side of BTR here, and they're just going to get full control over this jungle side, effectively kind of squishing out advantages BTR could utilize to get back into this game.
Yeah, and talking about BTR, you have to feel bad for them because this isn't the situation that they wanted to be in. They want to survive the laning phase, but unfortunately, the aggressive moves from Mineski shut down the fairly passive game that they were trying to play. So Mineski, they're making the right moves here by not letting BTR have that comfortable transition towards the mid-late game where they can really shine with their team fighting comp.
Yeah, looks like Mineski, they're not going to allow Bigatron Esports to realize that win condition just yet. James, will he make it out alive in time? No, not quite. Looks like Minky as well as Mintry will manage to take him down. Teleport will be continued by Kaigu, though. That will end in a 1-0 for BTR. Small pickup right there.
Actually, that's a great pickup for BTR because, like I mentioned, it's very difficult for them to attack the 3-man squad in the mid lane because there's a threat of double teleport. They make the right read, they make the right play. They catch out the Rise, and James wasn't able to Realm Warp in time. The Counter-Strike stun from the Jax canceled the channeling of that ability, so that means there will be a bit of time here where BTR can move around the map freely without the threat of the Rise coming in for a flank. So that does buy them a bit of time here, but they need more pickups such as that if they want to complete this stall and really come back into this game.
Yeah, that is kind of the win condition that Bigatron Esports is playing to right now, 20 minutes into the game. So Baron, that's going to be a pretty massive objective that both teams are going to contest here. More so probably for Mineski, as that'll allow them to close out a little bit earlier on. Take note, I gotta hand it to the Indonesian squad though. So far, I'd say they've been holding off quite well towards realizing their optimal scaling. It's only a matter of time. It looks like that's going to be Mineski making the proactive move. Full lockdown onto Spade. Spade, he tries to flash away, but that's going to be 3 members they're contending with from Bigatron Esports. Spade looking very, very low. That's going to be the cost of areas for to save. Radiant shoves away the rest of Mineski. No casualties after that fight.
Yeah, a lot of things were burned there from the side of Bigatron. Whoa, Gary's so aggressive. Even Arcane shifting in. We're still going.
Yep, looks like Gary just very gutsy, knowing very well that he's pretty much leading the fray for Mineski.
There's no jungler.
And wow, looks like that's going to be Mineski. I was just talking about this earlier. They're going to go for Baron Nashor. They're going to push for their advantages all the more in this game.
Yeah, and with no cooldowns available on the side of BTR, Mineski, they did go for the fight, but I think the ultimates are more needed from the side of Bigatron Esports. Baron going over to the Filipino squad.
Yes, left uncontested right there. Small consolation to trade. Minky was able to take down that first tier turret towards the bot lane, but at what cost at this point? Bigatron Esports, they have to play a bit more defensive with this Baron Empowered minion pushing in onto the side of Mineski.
Yeah, they need to try and hold out here, but it's going to be very difficult for Bigatron Esports to actually stop the push because there is a severe lack of engage from their lineup. It's only the Chain of Corruption from the Varus that could really start fights here from the Indonesian squad. So if they want to stop the push coming from Mineski, they need to look for a really great opportunity.
Meanwhile, looking at things here, so far the configuration that I'm looking at is okay. So Kaigu will be going up towards top side, Hamas pushing out towards bot, while the rest of the Mineski squad lingering towards this mid lane here. So they're really going to start pressuring all these lanes towards establishing better control over Summoner's Rift against BTR.
Yeah, do note though that teleport's still not available for Kaigu, and Hamas did swap out his own teleport for a heal for a bit more safety if he does get jumped on again by both the Kazakhs and the Jack. So a bit more safety on the Reds, but it is still on cooldown. I think they're going to try and go for a catch onto Hamas, but given that he doesn't have any summoners available, he doesn't want to stick around in the sideline as we see Glacier Prison.
Yeah, that was a lockdown onto Spade, but unfortunately Mineski could not push that. They're not going to take that risk right there. They're just going to allow themselves to allow BTR to go back while taking down this turret right there. That's going to be second tier turret taking down towards mid side. Will Mineski push this all the more? Looks like Kaigu has already has that wave pushed up towards top, so it looks like Mineski can make that transition. Take note, both TG and Hamas are looking for that bait if ever one of the members of BTR are gonna extend over there. Are they gonna though?
I don't think BTR are interested to fight now as we see Relmarp in the top lane.
Yeah, they try to go for Mickey. Mickey will manage to back away. They're just allowing him to back off from this turret just so that Mineski can take all the more.
And Mineski are making a great use of this Baron buff, really taking as many towers as they can from the Indonesian squad. Now, there was already a lot of chip damage onto the mid lane inhibitor turret. Mineski now, they're posturing around that tower. Unless BTR go for a fight here, I don't think they can defend.
Yeah, and you have to take note, there's just a lot of damage coming in from Gary towards this backside. BTR, they're not pushing their boundaries here. It looks like that turret is going down any minute, and there it goes. It looks like, let's go ahead and see. We'll just break out into a team fight, though, because Mineski, they could just pretty much take this inhibitor clean.
Watch out for the Chain of Corruption that will start everything here. That is the key for BTR. If they want to stop this inhibitor from going down, they might want to look for a fight.
Oh, looks like Minky, he's going to go straight in. Cosmic Radiance has been popped up by the members of BTR, but that's going to be Hamas. He's going down. Kaigu was pushing up towards top side. Mineski will back away for the meantime.
Yeah, Mineski, like I mentioned, if BTR want to stop the push from happening, they needed to go for a fight. And you see right there, Chain of Corruption goes out and they stop Mineski in their tracks. They defend their mid lane inhibitor.
Yes, lucky for BTR right there, realizing that they needed to pull the trigger by at least getting one pick off. They do manage to find it in the form of Hamas, and looks like Mineski will make a transition to take the second Mountain Drake of the game, third dragon overall.
Yeah, it will be their second dragon take, and I think this will help them take down neutral objectives even faster if they're able to reach station. I don't think Baron is spawning anytime soon, but Mineski will benefit with this Drake, going to be able to take that objective down even faster. But in the meantime, I think BTR, they've defended well against the Baron up Mineski.
Yeah, they did manage to hold off 25 minutes into the game. Still looking to reach that optimal spike in the late game where they really shine with its composition. Still a little bit of a climb to get there though, but I think that's pretty much good considering that Mineski, they could have taken all the more with that Baron empowered minion wave pushing in onto BTR, but they pretty much held their ground quite well.
I actually think BTR are pretty happy with the position that they're in at the moment, given the way that the early game went, where their bot lane lost pretty hard due to the fact that TG was able to set up a lot of early game plays with his Leona. Mineski were supposed to break open the base with that Baron buff, but with the inhibitor not going down, it means that BTR are still able to hold out. And this is scary if you're Mineski, because I did mention BTR, they want to go for those team fights where it's a full-on 5v5 where their composition can really shine. And even though they are behind, you can't count them out because they do have the Azir, they do have the Varus. It's a very tough situation now for Mineski because they're going to try and find a way to break open the base.
Yeah, it looks like they're going to be going for round 2 here by pushing out this mid lane. June actually gets the initiate right then and there onto the AD carry of BTR. He's going to go down in a jiffy. It looks like Spade, he's looking very low as well. Gary, no fear at all, just goes in on him. That's going to be the double kill. Radiance shoves out both TG and Hamas. Hamas getting the kill onto Mickey. There's only 2 members. Make that only 1 member, and that'll be the ace for Mineski as they potentially Could this be the finish?
Yeah, it's still around 30 seconds on the death timers. If somebody wants to defend from BTR, they just aren't available. Kaigu just burned the Gnar ultimate to kill the minion wave, and I think after one decisive realm up in the mid lane, Mineski, 27 minutes into the game, will take down Bigatron Esports.
Absolutely amazing. So there you have it, guys. That's going to be game 2 going to the Philippines squad. Congratulations to Mineski as they take a win against Indonesia's Bigatron Esports. GG, well played.
Oh my god, that game ended in a snap. Like, you wouldn't think Bigatron Esports had a bit more time to try and defend, but in the end, Mineski, just the decisiveness on them, and they just really played around their winning lane as well. I mean, from start to finish, their bot lane was super duper ahead. I mean, Gary on this Ezreal, he didn't die the entire game, so just a really greatly played game there by the Filipino squad.
Yeah, it was just slightly calm within those first few minutes, but as soon as Mineski started pulling the trigger, it was just pretty much the climb right there. And I gotta give my kudos to Bigatron Esports right though. Like we mentioned, they kinda held out towards the end of that Baron push from Mineski, but afterwards, because of Mineski, how they played out those fights, just ultimately spiraled in their favor towards that first victory for the Philippine squad.
Yeah, and so far, great momentum here being built up by Mineski. I mean, they want to go to that road to MSI, and after that first match win, they are one step closer.
Man, oh man, beautifully well played out here. And like I mentioned, this is what I love about this particular GPL right here. Even though technically it's the last GPL that we'll see before we transition to that brand new format for Southeast Asia. Really big stuff happening for League of Legends esports here in our region. But of course, when we do come back after that pretty explosive game, it is going to be Sovereign of Singapore taking the stage once again, as Ascension Gaming will be facing them. The team from Thailand will be coming back for that match in just a few. But of course, we'll be taking a quick break as well. We've been your casters, Arctic at your service. And of course, with me is Chisto. This is the Southeast Asian English broadcast of the 2018 Garena Premier League Spring Season Group Stage. We'll see you guys in just a little bit.